Gary is a psychology professor at a university. He leads a low-profile life, driving a Honda Civic, tending to flowers, and raising cats daily. Despite the monotony of his life, he finds joy in it. In addition to teaching at the university, he also works part-time undercover to supplement his family's income. Unlike the undercover agents we commonly know, Gary is responsible for handling cases of hiring murderers. Today, he was suddenly informed that Jasper was suspended for drug trafficking. Gary, who was originally in charge of technical support, was unexpectedly promoted to replace Jasper as a fake assassin and part-time employer of murderers. This time, the employer is a tough character with a long criminal record. Gary does not want to risk his life for a side job. His colleague Phil comforts Gary, assuring him that they will intervene if anything goes wrong. Jasper gives Gary some advice. He must act like a real killer to expose the employer's crimes. To appear more like a killer, Gary trades pants with Phil. Under the close surveillance of his colleagues, Gary is escorted to the agreed location. As soon as they meet, the employer begins to interview Gary. Gary acts very professionally, instantly suppressing the other party's momentum. After successfully taking the first step, he presses on, informing the employer of his method of disposing of bodies. He will dismember them, throw the bodies to the crocodiles, and blow up the heads. As for fingerprints, he will throw out a finger every 5 miles while driving. The employer, completely convinced that Gary is a real killer, slides an advance payment to him under the table. Subsequently, Gary successfully elicited key information from the employer, ensuring that the evidence was complete. As soon as the employer stepped out, he was surrounded and arrested by the police. His colleagues praised Gary's exceptional acting skills and his successful rescue of a life. Gary felt exhilarated by his experience playing a killer and decided to fully commit to this side job, striving to be the best. Before meeting new clients, he conducts thorough background checks and learns about their preferences through social media and other means. This time, he donned a new disguise for a new client and successfully sent the man to the police station. After receiving a tip, the police made sure that those who wanted to hire a murderer could get Gary's contact information. Gary taught himself makeup skills and tailored the killer's image to suit each client's desires. In his subsequent work, Gary encountered a variety of employers, including a young man who wanted to kill a gang boss, a woman who wanted to kill her husband for his big house, and a child who wanted to kill his mother because he had no money. These cases were all eventually sent to the police station. This part-time job not only gave Gary immense confidence, but also affected his character and personality, and even changed the way he taught his students. Gary's ex-partner has had a child with someone else. She once thought Gary lacked passion and did not believe he would change, so she left him. If she knew about Gary's current job, she might regret it. Jasper, who had been transferred to technical support, applied to return to his former position, but the director told him that Gary's acting as a killer was better and his conviction rate was higher. If Jasper continued to make trouble, he would lose his current job. Gary's next client is a beautiful woman named Maddie, who used to be a hairdresser and a flight attendant, but after marrying her husband Ray, she stopped updating social media. Gary is very curious about Maddie and meets her wearing sunglasses. During the conversation, he learns that Maddie is confined at home by her husband, not allowed to work, and suffers from domestic violence and forced dieting. Maddie tastes the pie that Gary brought and praises its taste, also complimenting Gary's dog for being cute. Gary and Maddie talk happily, almost forgetting his identity. Maddie tells Gary that she feels like she's living in a prison every day and can't stand such a life. At this moment, her husband Ray calls, and Maddie becomes very nervous, hastily handing over a stack of money to Gary. Gary, feeling compassion, refuses Maddie's money and advises her to leave her husband. However, Gary's conversation with Maddie is overheard by his colleagues, who accuse him of unprofessional conduct. Gary explains that Maddie is just a lost soul. Jasper is waiting to see Gary's joke and states that his behavior will be recorded in the report. In court, the lawyer of the person who hired the murderer accuses Gary of being a manipulative fraudster and believes that the police's operation is a deceptive undercover action. Although Gary is used to such scenes, he still feels uncomfortable with such personal attacks. In the end, the jury found the person who hired the murderer guilty. The husband of the woman who hired the murderer ultimately forgives her, and the jury finds her not guilty. Gary finally received a text message from Maddie, inviting him to participate in a dog rescue event. Gary dressed more handsomely, and Maddie has a new life now, working at a dog charity organization. She has left her bad husband Ray and is preparing to divorce him. Maddie has also changed to a beautiful new hairstyle and thanked Gary for helping her out of the predicament. At an ambiguous moment, Maddie was called back to work by her colleague, and Gary happily played rugby with the children, which was seen by Maddie. However, the relationship between Gary and Maddie is not simple. Maddie doesn't believe that Gary would kill for money, but Gary knows in his heart that Maddie likes the killer Lou-In whom he impersonates. Therefore, he can't tell Maddie that he is an undercover agent and must continue to play this role. The two fell into a crazy love, sticking together like glue. Gary, with his witty mind and rich experience, can easily respond to various sudden questions from Maddie. Maddie does not doubt Gary's identity at all. One time, Gary and Maddie went to a bar to dance. After enjoying the passion, they continued to be intimate outside the bar. Unexpectedly, they ran into Maddie's husband Ray. Ray was very angry when he saw Gary. Gary didn't want to have a conflict with him and tried to leave with Maddie. However, Ray chased them relentlessly. Seeing the other party's persistent entanglement, Gary took out a gun directly, and Ray, who was scared to death, immediately backed off. Gary told Maddie about Ray's intention to hire a murderer to kill her and reminded her to be careful. But not long after, Ray was found shot dead. The police began to investigate the case, and Jasper took the initiative to volunteer, hoping to find the real culprit. Jasper has guessed that Gary is Maddie's new boyfriend, but Gary firmly denies it. Jasper has no direct evidence and can't say much more. Gary came to Maddie's house again and found that Maddie already knew about Ray's death. Although Ray was a bad person, Maddie had loved him and was very sad. Gary comforted Maddie with compassion, but found that her expression was not right, as if she was afraid of something. Because I killed him, it turned out that Maddie chose to strike first. After hearing this, Gary was very shocked and finally admitted to Maddie that he had never killed anyone and was just an undercover agent. He admitted that because Maddie liked his killer identity, he had not told the truth all the time. After hearing this, Maddie asked Gary to leave, but the police had already listed her as the primary suspect. It turned out that 6 months ago, Ray's life insurance policy had increased by $1 million, with his wife Maddie as the sole beneficiary. This happened before Maddie hired the murderer. Jasper deliberately asked Gary if he had seen Maddie afterwards, and Gary had to admit that they had indeed met by chance that night. Jasper was also there. This trick didn't work, so Jasper proposed that Gary wear a wiretap and go to Maddie as a killer to personally test whether Maddie killed her husband. Maddie will definitely tell the truth to Gary. Gary can't let others know that he has a guilty heart, so now he can only go ahead with a stiff neck. As soon as he entered the door, Gary took out his mobile phone and let Maddie see the words on it, telling Maddie that the police were wiretapping and asking Maddie to follow his guidance to lie and deceive the police. Smart Maddie was very insightful and denied that Ray's death was related to herself. Then Gary asked Maddie about the bar incident, and under Gary's guidance on the phone, Maddie made up a story. Finally, Gary asked Maddie about the insurance policy, and Maddie said that Ray's family was very rich and he liked to spend money indiscriminately, but she was not interested in money at all. Their dialogue was seamless, and Gary praised Maddie's performance. They successfully deceived all colleagues, and now everyone believes that Maddie is innocent. Jasper was also like a deflated ball, and the investigation was over. Gary successfully helped Maddie get rid of the suspicion. However, when Gary came to Maddie's house again in the evening, he found Jasper there. It turned out that Jasper had guessed that Gary and Maddie played a trick and guessed that Gary would come to find Maddie. Jasper was well prepared. If Gary had revealed a flaw in the afternoon's conversation, Jasper could return to his original position. But if Gary deceived everyone like now, Jasper could also blackmail Maddie. Gary wanted to continue pretending to be foolish, but Maddie asked him to sit down and listen to Jasper. Then Jasper began to talk endlessly, claiming to have enough evidence to let Maddie rot in jail, and Gary, as an accomplice, would also have to serve a few years in prison. However, Maddie had drugged Jasper's wine, and Jasper became more and more abnormal, and finally lay directly on the ground. Gary took out a plastic bag and put it on Jasper's head, making up a story that Jasper was found in a car in a remote area, full of drugs in his body, and with a bag on his head, obviously committing suicide. In this way, Gary has become a real killer from a fake killer, and the story with Maddie can continue. In the last class of the semester, Gary told the students to seize the identity they want for themselves and to indulge in becoming that person after this class. In the end, Gary and Maddie became an enviable loving couple with a complete family and lived a happy life. This film is adapted from a true story. Gary's prototype, Gaiwan Johnson, was born in 1947 and died in 2022. He was a veteran of the Vietnam War and later became a university professor and undercover agent, arresting more than 70 people. As for the murder part, the plot is of course fictional. The Professional Killer, also known as When the Killer Falls in Love, premiered at the Venice Film Festival on September 5, 2023, and was released on Netflix in June 2024, a comedy film. Although there are many character dialogues and Gary's inner monologues in the front part of the film has become very attractive since Maddie appeared. Especially the part where Gary types on the mobile phone to guide Maddie to speak. The plot is very interesting, giving the two protagonists the space to fully display their acting skills. I hope you can also seize the identity you want, as Gary said in the film, and become the person you really are. As for the fictional part of the plot, just be happy to watch, and don't imitate it.